Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our regular family of seekers, plus some extra bonuses today that joined us. So we're extra blessed today with this Sangha. And we are going to kind of do our chapter 6 summary review. So we've spent the past, has it been like 3 months maybe? It's been a good amount of time going through chapter 6 really slowly and going through each verse and talking about its relevance in our lives. And today we're going to go through all 47 verses in chapter 6 and to kind of understand better the flow and the context of kind of where we are in the Gita and where Krishna's bringing us. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever we do these, it's easier. It's kind of nice to see everything in context, all the verses in context, and it helps to even kind of remember things that we learned when we can connect them with other things. And I hope you guys like these summary reviews. I find them very helpful, even just like preparing for them to go through and kind of see where we were and where we're going and how it all connects. So that's what we're doing today. We're not going to read any verses today. And I don't have any discussion questions for us, but if anybody wants to, if anything's coming for anybody wants to share, as always, please, just raise your hand or speak out and contribute in that way. So yeah, chapter 6, we're going to reflect on some of these powerful insights. Where Arjuna opens up about how tough it is to calm the mind. That's like right in the middle of the chapter, like a pivotal point for us is when Arjuna's like, look, I hear what you're saying, but controlling the mind is impossible, right? And after he says that, then we get to witness Krishna's beautiful answer as he kind of gently guides him through it. Because this is so relatable for us, right? This feeling of that the mind is just like a restless kid, just like jumping around. Emotions are just constantly bubbling up, coming out of nowhere, pulling us in directions that maybe we don't really want to go, right? Or stubborn thoughts holding us back. And Arjuna, he gets it. And he's honest about how challenging this path really is. And Krishna reminds us that even though it's tough, with steady practice and learning to let go, it's totally possible to find that inner calm, right? And then after that, there's that super relatable moment where Arjuna wonders, what if someone starts this journey with faith, but then gets distracted and falls off? Does all that effort go to waste? And then Krishna's answer comes. He says, so comforting. He says, no sincere effort is ever lost. Sometimes it takes time, maybe many lifetimes, but the process stays with us. Right? And then as we come to the end of the chapter, Krishna makes it clear that the highest yoga isn't just about controlling the mind or doing good actions, right? But it's about love. It's about connection. It's about devotion, ultimately to him. Right? And that's what brings this real fulfillment. So we're gonna kind of weave through every verse today in this. We'll see if we can do it in 50 minutes and see how all of this kind of ties together to bring us from this Ashtanga yoga path to this bhakti path. All right, so we'll start with this first section. If any of you guys have a Gita open and you want to kind of skim through the verses as we're talking about them, feel free to do that too, because that's what we're going to do. We're just going to breeze through all these verses. We're going to start with this with verses 1 through 9. Okay, this is the first section of this chapter, verses 1 through 9, and these verses outline the foundational steps needed before you can really renounce worldly life and focus on meditation. So in this first section, Krishna is going to describe how a yogi gradually advances through this disciplined action and internal purification. So in the first couple verses here, Krishna flips our idea of what it really means to be renounced. Right? That's kind of where we start in the first text of the 6th chapter, because we often think of a renunciate as someone who walks away from their job or their family, their responsibilities. Right? But Krishna's saying here that that's not the full picture. He's saying that true renunciation is an inner state, right? It's doing your duty, it's showing up for life, but it's not clinging to the results. So many of us, I know when I got into spiritual life, I was like, I'm ready to quit my job. And I actually did, and it ended up being not a great choice. But it's not, we don't need to quit our jobs. We all have these roles, we all have these responsibilities. Stay with it. Stay with these results, or stay with these roles and responsibilities, but detach internally, right? Just do your duty, but as an offering to God, right? Don't do it. Don't be so driven by money or praise or personal gain. Act because it's the right thing to do, and then offer the results to something higher. And we talked about that a lot in the previous chapters, but that's kind of where we're starting here in the 6th chapter, right? And then as we move forward into the 2nd verse, Krishna he makes an even bigger point, that renunciation and yoga aren't completely separate paths. And he's saying that they're two sides of the same coin, because yoga is about connecting to the divine, right? And you can't really connect, you can't really give God your all if you're still chasing sense pleasures. Right? So letting go of those cravings naturally deepens your connection. And deepening your connection naturally helps you let go, because you attach to something higher, and those cravings that used to kind of temporarily satisfy you are no longer really needed. Right? You kind of see them for the band-aid that they were. So in that way, this renunciation and connection to God are the same. And then in 6.3, Krishna gives a roadmap. And he says, in the beginning, spiritual growth comes through action, right? Doing your work with the right intention. And then he says, only later, when the mind is purified, can you really fully step back from material activities, like authentically. So that's why the real work starts now, right where you are. And this is where, so the Gita doesn't really get deep into the Ashtanga yoga practice, the eightfold limbs, the old eightfold path, all the different limbs of Ashtanga yoga. But Krishna kind of more like references it, right? Because we're in this emergency situation on a battlefield. He's not like getting into all the details of this path, but he's referencing it really for the purpose of showing why bhakti is the recommended path, right? But what's happening here? Well, just kind of, again, we really went through the Eightfold Path just so that you guys had context. But what he's saying here is that these first 4 limbs of the Eightfold Path, the yamas, the niyamas, the asana, the pranayama, right? They're all about building this strong, grounded foundation. Even while you're living in this ordinary life in the world, they focus on like the external physical side of the practice. Right? What's often linked with this hatha yoga, right? Those are the first 4 limbs of Ashtanga yoga. The last 4 limbs go more inside, are more internal, right? This pratyahara, right? This withdrawing, the danya, the samadhi, right? They take us inwards. They deal with this mental and meditative side, right? The inner journey, traditionally known as dana yoga. That's the name of this chapter, actually. Okay, so that's like the 8-limb system. And the first 4 limbs are more about like acting in this world. That's kind of where the spiritual seeker starts. And then as you become purified and you no longer have material desires, and you're rightly situated in your constitutional position as a servant of God, right? You can meditate, and you can focus, and you can turn inwards. Right? So that's the last, and those are the last 4 limbs. Okay, so in verse 3, he's just saying, at the beginning, you act, right? And at the end, as you're fully purified and you can step back from these material activities, that's when you can really go inwards. And that's the last 4 limbs of the Ashtanga yoga path. So then as we move forward into 6.4, Krishna is saying that a real yogi isn't defined by what they do outwardly, but what they let go of inside. Right? They're not chasing pleasure. They're not indulging in it. And the hardest part, they don't even want it anymore. Right? So they're not chasing it, they're not indulging in it, and they don't even care for it anymore. That's the real yogi. Right? Because they found something deeper that makes those material cravings kind of lose their shine. Okay, so now this is leading us to these verses that talk about the mind. This is where we get to verses 5 and 6, where we're talking about the danger of an uncontrolled mind. And we really went deep into this. We talked so much about all the traps that our minds lead us into, right? And then we know the mind can be the greatest enemy, right? It can drag us into this restlessness, this comparison game, this dissatisfaction, right? But a controlled mind can be our best friend. A controlled mind can lead us towards peace and clarity. So control your mind, right? And that's ultimately where Ashtanga yoga is trying to take us, or where it's not really trying to take us, but where we're going in Ashtanga yoga. That it's the path. We're trying to control our mind, right? So that ultimately we can connect with something higher. And so that's where in the seventh verse, Krishna says that when you've mastered your mind, you've basically already connected with the super soul within, right? With God within the heart. Because at that point, life's ups and downs, comfort, discomfort, praise, criticism, they don't shake you because your peace isn't coming from outside anymore. And you've really connected with God in the heart. And we can only do that by really calming the mind because the mind will pull us away. We all know the mind pulls us in a million different directions. But until we can master the mind, until we can quiet the mind, it's nearly impossible to really connect within. So then in the eighth verse, Krishna describes the qualities of someone truly advanced. Right? He says, this is like our gold standard. Right? This is like they're truly satisfied from within. And they're not chasing after gold, stones, or pebbles. Because they see that their real wealth is spiritual, right? They see all those things the same because real wealth is spiritual. And then this is the last verse of this section in verse 9. He takes it to the highest level where he sees that they not only see, pebbles, stones, gold the same. They see all people equally, right? Friends and enemies, supporters and critics, right? Saints and sinners. That's the sign of someone whose heart is anchored beyond the fluctuations of the mind. So this in this first section, the flow is clear, right? It goes from renunciation begins inside. Right? It's inseparable from yoga. Right? You start with action. You master the mind. You see beyond material measures of value. Right? And you relate to people without bias. That's the flow of these first 9 verses. And that's the first foundation that Krishna's laying before he's guiding Arjuna deeper into the heart of yoga. And so that's the first section here. And that first section, does anybody want to share anything about that first section? Was that too fast? Or did you guys connect with that? You see that kind of the flow and why even we're trying to control the mind? Where that's taking us?
Can I share something, Radha?
Yeah.
Please. Hare Krishna, everyone. Just really quickly, this is resonating so much because I had these 3 friends of mine. They invited me to this thing, and I had also the opportunity to go to the temple, right? To go to the temple and be with people for I think it's called Jayabula for the appearance there of Balaram, right? So as I'm doing that, they're inviting me to this. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I do like these people, but they're like, do they have alcohol, or should we bring alcohol with us? Like, they're in a different mindset, right?
Mm.
Should we have a drink there? Should we wait? Should we and all the things that they're asking, and I'm like, you know what? I said if I say no, they're not going to ask me to go to things anymore. But I don't want to go to things anymore with them. Like, I like them, they're nice people, but they're not the association that I want to keep. So it's like similar
Mm.
here where it's saying like you have to sort of kind of look through and with that realization find out, consider yourself, consider what's happening in your life, and kind of maneuver things accordingly.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of what my choice was. And so I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. This, and that's so relatable, right? Because we all make decisions like that every day. And it's not even that it's bad, but it's just like to the degree that we're attached to material things to make us happy, we're not attached to God for that. It's like it's we can't truly be connected if we're not renounced. Just like he says in that second verse, it's the same side, it's different sides of the same coin. And so we have to kind of make those decisions so that we can be investing in our spiritual bank account or we're not. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So that's what Krishna's doing here. He's laying that foundation for what it means to be a yogi, right? And in this next section, he's going to get really practical. He's going to describe exactly how to live and practice meditation. And this is the next section. It takes us from verse 10 all the way to 32, where he's going to describe these progressive realizations that a yogi experiences while advancing in meditation. So we got to that meditation spot. We kind of like zoomed through it, but we went through these first, say we went through these first four limbs of Ashtanga yoga, that really deal with acting outside, right? And now we're ready to go inside. And that's where that these are these different realizations that you can have of God when you're ready to go inside. So the first, and we're going to walk through these three different realizations of God, starting with Brahman, right? The impersonal spiritual reality. Right? And then realization of God in the heart. That's the next level of realization of God. And then realization of Bhagavan, which is God in a personal form. We didn't really, we'll go over these more as the Gita goes forward. So if you're not quite in like connecting with that yet, that's okay. But that's just kind of a little extra split of this particular section is we're going to walk through these different realizations. So in verse 10, he says that a transcendentalist should always engage their body, their mind, and their self in connection with the Supreme. Right? That means making your whole life an offering, not just your meditation time. And he also recommends here living in a quiet, secluded place away from distractions and letting go of feelings of my and I want, right? Because again, the more that we carry these desires and this possessiveness, the harder it is to focus inward. So this is again for somebody who's gone through those first four limbs and is ready to really turn inwards, right? That's where we're going. So then in the next text in 11 and 12, he tells us to find a quiet, steady spot, right? To sit comfortably and to focus the mind. Because the real goal of yoga is to purify the heart. So he's giving us some like physical instructions to kind of place our body. That's where he goes next in 13 and 14, to sit up straight, to keep your gaze on a neutral spot so your mind doesn't wander off, right? Or doze off. Right? And focus on him in your heart. Make this connection the real aim of life. And then in verse 6 or 15, he explains that the result of living with this kind of steady discipline. It is that you free yourself from material existence and you reach his spiritual abode. So he gives us kind of like the North Star, like go inwards and this is what's available for you. This is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Or that's not a really good one. Like, I don't know. What do you find at the end? This is like the medal at the end of the race. This is what you're going to get. Right? The reason is simple, right? What keeps us bound is our attachment to the body and everything connected to it. Right? Pleasure, pain, ego, fear. But when you consciously regulate your body, your mind, your actions, these attachments loosen and you discover peace and freedom. So that's where we're going. Right? You can free yourself from this material existence and you can reach his spiritual abode. So continuing on, with these practical kind of like must do's for a good meditation practice, right? He reminds us that balance is essential. Right? If you eat too much or too little, if you sleep too much or too little, you can't really be a yogi. Right? And the principle here is that your body should support your spiritual life. It shouldn't fight against it. Right? If you eat too much, you feel, well, if you don't eat enough, you don't have energy. Right? And same with sleeping, right? These things, if we overdo or we underdo, they can kind of pull us away from our practice. So we want to be mindful. We want to be balanced so that our body isn't becoming a distraction to our meditation practice. Right? So then finally in 6:17, he sums it up. He says, if you regulate your eating, your sleeping, your recreation, your work, you can actually destroy material suffering through yoga. Right? But without that steadiness, right, in daily life, your practice is going to be shaky. Right? But if you're balanced, your mind can become peaceful, right? Your energy can be steady, and your spiritual practice can bear real fruit. So this is again kind of just preparing the body and the mind for real authentic connection. Right? What's required for that in the body and the mind? We have to care for the body and the mind. Right? We can't overly care for the body and the mind such that we become obsessed and solely focused on it. Right? But we want to care for it in a way that it helps us in our spiritual practice, right? It becomes conducive to our spiritual life. And so his point here, overall is saying it's not yoga isn't just about what you do during meditation. It's about shaping your whole lifestyle so that it supports your connection to him. That's why we do these things, when we practice yoga, even like an asana practice, we're not trying to make your body look hot, right? So that you can have more sense gratification, get more pleasure from it. And we're trying to stay healthy and strong so that we can use it to connect and serve God. Right? And not even be, and because that's ultimately what's going to bring us the greatest fulfillment and happiness in life. Right? Everything else is going to lead us to like eventually a dead end. Right? At best, if something doesn't explode in front of us along the way. So in verse 618, Krishna is saying that when a yogi trains the mind, rises above material cravings, and rests in spiritual awareness, that's when they're truly grounded in yoga. Right? Training the mind, rising above material cravings, resting in spiritual awareness. That's when you're truly grounded in yoga. And then in 619, Krishna gives us this beautiful image to understand a steady mind. Right? So much of this chapter is about the mind because it's so important, because it can be such an obstacle to our spiritual life, because it can just drag us in so many different directions. Right? So he's really trying to hone in, like, get your mind to a steady place. Right? So he's giving us this beautiful image to understand a steady mind, a lamp in a windless place. Right? Imagine like a little flame staying perfectly still because there's no wind to blow it around. We've all been in there when you're like trying to light a match and there's just like so much wind, it's like impossible. Right? But when there's no wind and the flame is just perfectly steady, that's what a yogi's mind looks like when it's controlled and they're focused in their meditation. Right? And for us here, the wind here is our desires and our distractions. Again, think of that time. Everybody, I'm sure, has tried to light a match when it is windy outside, right? And it is like just nearly impossible and so frustrating. Because that wind, in the same way, the wind of our desires and our distractions, right, are cluttering up our mind. And that flame is going out. But when there's no wind, when there's no desires or distractions, when they're quieted, our consciousness is calm and unwavering. And that's this beautiful analogy that he gives us. So important to try to steady the mind, to keep the mind calm. And that's why he spends a good amount of time giving us just practical guidance to do this. Balance, regulation. Right? Don't go chasing all of your desires blindly. Don't go following every whim that your mind throws at you. Because we're in training. We're in training here. We're trying to train our bodies, our minds, right? So that we can serve God. That's ultimately what we're doing here in this material existence. And if we get too carried away chasing these other things, it's going to distract us from the ultimate goal. So that's why the mind is so important, because the mind, if it's untrained, can be our worst enemy. It can keep us from making any spiritual advancement in this life. So that all takes us to this next level. In verses 20 through 23, Krishna talks about this next level, this stage called samadhi, or full trance. This is like further down on the limbs of Ashtanga yoga. This is like, you've quieted, you've found a quiet place, your mind is steady, you're at this, like, you've let go of material desires, you have no attachments. Right? This is a pretty high standard, right? Where the yogi's mind is completely free from any of these material thoughts. And in this place, the yogi experiences this pure joy that doesn't depend on anything outside. Right? Imagine that. Imagine that. No sights, no sounds or sensations. Right? But you're so joyful, the most joyful. Right? Just a deep, unshakable happiness that comes only from connecting with the true self. And even when life gets tough, this person remains steady and peaceful. This is true freedom from all suffering caused by material attachments. This is what we're going for, right? And you can get there through steady practice. The samadhi in bhakti is making everything in your life an offering to God. Right? Where you're so focused on God, everything in your life becomes an offering. So it may look like you're doing ordinary things from the outside, but on the inside, in your consciousness, internally, it's all service to God. It's all devotion to God. That's bhakti samadhi. And then how do we get there? Krishna points out in 624 that it takes determination and faith. These are such good principles for us. We're not necessarily Ashtanga yoga yogis, and Krishna tells us how, difficult this path is, and therefore recommends bhakti. But these principles can be applied to our bhakti yoga practices and help us to make the spiritual progress, right? Determination and faith. And who could argue that those two things are really required to make success in anything? Right? And spiritual life, what to speak of, it's not straight. It's not an easy path. Distractions and temptations will come. Our minds will wander, just like Shakti was talking about. The key is to keep coming back again and again to the practice. Right? When desires pop up, don't engage with them or chase after them. Just notice them and let them go. Right? With determination and faith. And then in 625, Krishna reminds us that this progress is gradual. We don't just fix our minds overnight. It takes steady effort, conviction, patience, right? Like driving a car with a clear map and a strong engine. In the same way, it's like the clear map is like our intelligence, and a strong engine is conviction. This conviction is so important to propel us forward. We have to be convinced that where we're going, what we're doing is where the ultimate connection and joy, happiness exists. We have to be so convinced, right? Or what's going to keep us going, right? Where's our engine to move forward in spiritual life? Right? And we have to have intelligence. We have to have a clear map to get there. We have to read and understand this spiritual wisdom, right? So that we have a clear map to get there. Because even if we are so convinced of it, but we don't really know what we're doing, we're just going to be driving around in circles. Right? This is why we need guides. Right? We need guides to lead us through these sastras, this spiritual wisdom, right? So that we really understand the process and then how to apply it. Right? But understand that it's gradual. Understand that it's gradual. There's no quick fix in spiritual life. There's no microwave of spiritual life. Right? We have to stick to the process. We have to show up, and we have to keep coming back. And that's what he says in 626. The mind naturally is going to flicker. It's going to wander. This is just how it's going to work. That's the nature of the mind. Okay. Understand that. But that's okay. because the practice is to gently pull it back. Whenever it drifts away, you pull it back. This consistent coming back is where that real transformation happens. In those hard moments, when the last thing we want to do is pull the mind back. Okay? Pull it back. That really hard person to love, right? That you want to love, but it's just hard to love, right? Pull the mind back. Pull the mind back. Right? That material attachment or desire pulling you away that you know is not really in your best interest. Right? You know it's not really going to make you feel better to cuss out your boss. Right? Pull the mind back. All these things get us too entangled, entrapped in material energy that they're like detours to our spiritual lives. So we have to be able to identify when the mind's getting pulled off track or getting too enamored with material energy and pull it back. That's the practice. And we're gonna resist it, right? Our mind's gonna fight us tooth and nail like a child throwing a tantrum. Right? Like when I pull my child away from a toy she wants to play with, she's like, right? Our mind's gonna do that. But that's the practice. Nothing that's like really rewarding comes easy. It does things that like, are so great, like whatever it is, you have to work for. Even like, having a fit body, it takes work, it takes discipline. It doesn't just like come to you. So when we talk about like the ultimate joy, the ultimate peace, the ultimate connection, right? It's going to take some discipline and it's going to take some struggle and there's going to be some resistance along the way. Be prepared, but just continue to come back and know that each time you come back, a real transformation is happening. And that's what Krishna tells us in 627. When the mind is finally fixed on him, the yogi reaches the highest joy beyond the modes of passion and ignorance. Right? And this peace is only earned through overcoming these restless emotions inside of us. As the mind calms, true happiness naturally arises. And this happiness, again, it's different than the temporary highs from external things. Like we can't even really fathom this level of happiness. Again, our happiness here that we're experiencing, like even like Ashley, she's on a great vacation. Great vacation. It's like I'm sure all these happiness, like we've all been on great vacations, right? But even like the most happy that you feel is still just like a band-aid compared to the happiness available for you by connection with source. That's this happy. It's hard for us to even comprehend in this piece because our material happiness is on a whole different realm. But that's what's available for us. This joy beyond the modes of passion and ignorance. Right? This lasting fulfillment from within. It's unshakable. And then following that, in 628, we're moving through this well. We're going to get through this whole chapter, guys. Chapter 6, you're going to know it all at the end of this. In 28, he shows the result of steady practice. Right? The self-controlled yogi becomes free from all material contamination and experiences perfect happiness in loving service to God. Perfect happiness in loving service to God. This isn't just an idea, right? It's a transformation of the consciousness where the soul connects deeply with the divine source of love and joy. Right? That's what's happening here. The soul, we all know, we have the soul and the super soul inside the heart. And our soul is constantly turning away from super soul, God in the heart, constantly turning away, thinking all these things outside are going to satisfy me. I'm just going to go outside to get full, to fill my cup. Right? When all the soul has to do is turn towards God in the heart. And just that connection alone will satisfy it exponentially more than any of these things outside that it's turning away from. Right? So when we can calm the mind, when we can find that steady peace, right? When we can keep from being pulled in every which direction, and the soul can turn back and the soul can connect. And that's where the ultimate joy exist. And that's the result here. You become free from this material contamination and you experience perfect happiness in that constitutional position as a servant of God, right? When you can turn back to the soul. So in 629, Krishna is explaining that a true yogi sees him everywhere and in every living being, and also sees every being as a part of him. Okay, so this is about recognizing that super soul, God in the heart, the divine presence within all hearts. Right? Unlike the soul, which we just talked about, it's unique to each person. The super soul is the same in everyone. So a self-realized yogi doesn't just see a dog or a person. They see Krishna's presence in all of them. Right? They understand that everything is connected to the divine. Even though we might get caught up in material desires, our true nature is to serve God directly. And therefore their vision, when they see everyone, what they're seeing is the super soul. It's like you see others as you see yourself. We know that rule, just like whatever you're struggling with, you see others as, that's just like the nature of material existence. But when you know God in your heart, you see God in everybody else's hearts. When you're that's how your vision becomes. And then in verse 630, Krishna says that when someone truly sees God everywhere and recognizes everything as a part of him, there's a deep, unbreakable connection. Right? To a person in Krishna consciousness, the world might look the same on the outside, but inside, they understand that everything they see is really Krishna's energy. Nothing exists apart from him. This awareness that Krishna is the source and the owner of all is the essence of true Krishna consciousness. I remember this class was really fun because we talked about how to see Krishna in everything as we go through our days, as we go to work, as we are a parent, as we're a friend, as we're a boss, as we're an employee, whatever we are, how to see Krishna everywhere. Right? This is something we can practice. We're not going to be perfect at it, but we could try to practice it. We could try to practice it in that in that moment of anger, when somebody at work shakes us, right? Or we're frustrated with our husband for not doing the dishes, right? Whatever it is. We can see God everywhere. Right? We can see God in that moment. This is what we're trying to train ourselves to do in bhakti. And then in 631, Krishna explains that the yogi who truly understands that the super soul and Krishna are one remains always connected to him, no matter the circumstance. It's a pretty tall order. But that's where this Ashtanga yoga practice is taking us. That's why these yamas, these niyamas, these first four limbs are so important to go through so that we can realize God in the heart. That's where Ashtanga yoga takes us. And finally, in 632, teaches us about spiritual equality, right? The perfect yogi sees all beings as equal, right? In their happiness and in their struggles, right? And this is like the verse of compassion. This is where it takes us, right? It's not just about connecting with God in the heart so we can experience supreme happiness. No, it's about bringing that to others, right? This compassion grows because we realize that we're all essentially the same, right? We're all essentially the same at heart. We all have these God-shaped holes in our heart, right? And we naturally want to help. Once ours is full, we naturally want to help others fill theirs. And this is spiritual maturity. It is not just about inner peace, right? Spiritual maturity, the pinnacle of spiritual maturity is extending that peace and joy to others, right? Recognizing that what brings us happiness can bring happiness to all. That's where we're going with all of this. So that's like we really kind of ran through, where the Ashtanga yoga practice at like a really high level, basically all to kind of see where it's taking us. Right? We don't want to just control the mind or, control the tongue, control our sleep so that we can, be more successful at work or have a happy marriage. Like, yes, we will have those things. We will have those things. But where it's actually bringing us is this connection to this place of connection with God, right? And everything else that ends up great in our life is a byproduct of that. And that's nice, right? But where it's actually bringing us is this connection with God so that we can share that with others. And maybe you're not like a, you know, maybe you don't give classes but you can share that with others just by being that beacon of love, just by being that light for somebody else. Right? Maybe your family, maybe your child, maybe at work. You can all think of ways that you can be that light because that's where this is taking us. So that's this section. Before we move to the next section, which is where Arjuna starts asking Krishna a couple questions. Does anybody want to share anything? How are you guys doing? Are you guys able to follow this? Is this too fast? Are you able to see the kind of the progression where we've been the past few months? Is it kind of bringing it all together? I see Mariah nodding her head. That's a good sign. Okay, well then let's continue. We'll try to wrap up these last couple questions. Does anybody remember the next question that Arjuna's going to ask, or the first question that Arjuna's going to ask here? That's where we're going. Does anybody remember? It's after Krishna kind of explains, this high standard, control the mind. This is what it looks like. This is what happens. He's like really putting it all there out in front of him. He's addressing this primary obstacle in our yoga practice, the restless mind, and how to deal with it. Right? So Arjuna expresses a concern. That's where we're going. And this was very relatable for all of us. It is very relatable. And he's saying, Arjuna says, Krishna, this all sounds amazing, but honestly, it feels impossible for me. My mind is so restless and unsteady. Right? I just don't see how I can do what you're describing. Right? And I think many of us feel this way when we read those verses. I mean, it is a high standard. It's a high standard. I'm not there. Right? So Arjuna, he's being very real here. He's being honest. He's being humble. He's saying, I want to follow this path, but I know my own limitations. Right? And this is all of us. I think this is all of us that are even here today. It's like, wow, that sounds great. Sign me up. Oh, but wait, I'm not quite there. My mind is crazy. And then Arjuna gets more specific, as he moves into text 34. He says, my mind, it's restless. It's turbulent. It's obstinate. It's very strong. Right? Do you guys remember going through those four things? It's restless. It's like a little kid who can't sit still. The mind always wants to jump to something new. It's hard to focus. Right? It's turbulent. The mind acts like a wild bully. It gets angry or emotional and completely disconnected from reality. It just snowballs. Anybody else's mind do this? And it's obstinate, and not just it's not just stubborn in a good way, but it clings to harmful ideas or desires even when it's clearly hurting me. And it's very strong. The mind is powerful. It's almost like a boss inside us that demands attention and control. This is what Arjuna is saying his mind is, right? And I know all of us can relate to all of these probably. And so in short, he's saying, Krishna, taming this mind feels tougher than controlling the wind. It's a vivid way of showing how frustrating and overwhelming our mental world can be. And so now Krishna's going to get real with him. Krishna lays out this gold standard for him and all of us. And Arjuna says, look, this is too hard. And so Krishna responds, and now we're at 35, he responds with both empathy and hope. He says, yes, it's very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it's not impossible. There's still hope. There's still hope for you. There's still hope for all of us. Right? And how? It's through this steady practice and detachment. Steady practice and detachment, right? Think of it like healing from an illness. You need medicine or therapy, like that's your practice, but you also need to avoid what's making you sicker. And that's detachment from harmful cravings. And so together these two help bring healing and transformation. That's what we have to do. Just like Shakti was saying at the beginning of class here. And yet we have to make those decisions to pull us away from things that just aren't gonna nourish the consciousness and aren't gonna upgrade the consciousness. We have to make those choices. We have to detach from them. And then we have to commit to our practice steadily. We can't just like flip a switch and if we're spending every single night out at bars and then all of a sudden switch and spend every single night reading the Gita, that might not be so practical or sustainable. But slowly we can start making more decisions that upgrade our consciousness and less decisions that degrade our consciousness. And together, these two help bring healing and transformation. And so then in the next verse in 36, Krishna reinforces this by being very clear and encouraging. He says, if your mind is uncontrolled, reaching self-realization is tough, almost impossible. But if you control your mind and you use the right methods, success is guaranteed. Success is guaranteed. This is a game changer because Krishna is not just teaching us theory, he's giving us a real practical roadmap and reassuring us that it's doable. Right? The struggle is real, but so is the possibility of victory. Right? Success is guaranteed if you control your mind and you use the right methods. So then in 37, Krishna's Arjuna speaks up again, right? With another honest concern. Anybody remember this last question? It's like the longest question. It's going to bring us all the way to the end. Anybody remember this last one?
Is it the riven cloud?
Yeah, the ribbon cloud. The ribbon cloud questions. When Arjuna asked, "What happens to someone who starts the spiritual path with faith, but then falls away because worldly distractions pull them back? What becomes of them? Do they lose everything?" Right? And this is again, it's a real and relatable fear. Like we're all wondering if faltering means failure. If starting but not finishing means that we've lost all of our progress. So this is a humble and vulnerable question. And then this is the verse that Mariah was just talking about, this 38. Arjuna gives this beautiful natural image to explain this. All right, Mariah, do you want to explain it for us? This cloud analogy?
Um, I'll try my best. So he like asks like, yeah, when someone starts on the path but then doesn't really like complete it, what happens to that? The cloud is like there's a cloud, but sometimes clouds will separate. And so like the little piece of the cloud or like the riven cloud or like the separated piece of the cloud kind of like floats off. And it's like then you're kind of like in between, like you're not fully doing it but you're like not really attached to like all the material things anymore, like like you're not really attached there anymore, and but you're like not really like fully into the spiritual cloud. That's how I like kind of like looked at it and we discussed about it. And yeah, I don't know, that's where I'm at.
That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah, and we talked about how all of us feel like that little cloud that's like separated from its big cloud of like chasing material desires and pleasures, but not quite attached to the other side here, right? And again, super relatable. So what happens if you end your life and you haven't yet attached to that other side? If you're just kind of this cloud that's in the middle somewhere? Right? It's just kind of lost. It's like no longer belongs to the first part, to the first group, but it's not yet belonging to the next. And this is how Arjuna describes someone who leaves the material world to seek transcendence, but then gets scattered, gets distracted, gets caught in between two worlds, right? Just disconnected and drifting. And then in 39, he admits how heavy this doubt feels inside of him. Right? This is heavy. This is weighing heavily on Arjuna. right? And he asked Krishna to completely dispel it, saying that only Krishna can do this. And this is deep too, because it's a deep moment of trust. Right? It's not, he's saying only Krishna can answer this. Nobody else. Nobody else but the Supreme. And then Krishna responds in the 40th verse with these reassuring words, full of compassion. He's saying, no matter what, a sincere spiritual seeker who strives for goodness will never be destroyed, neither in this world nor the next. He says, your effort's never wasted, my friend. And that's a cool part too, where he calls Arjuna my friend. It's warm, it's comforting. He's reminding us all that the sincere effort protects us, even if the path isn't perfect. So then he goes on, what happens if someone doesn't reach perfection in this life? So then in 41, Krishna explains that they enjoy the fruits of their spiritual effort in heavenly realms. That's like where we dispel our karmic credits, right? If we have positive karmic credits, we go to heavenly realms. If we have negative karmic credits, we go to hell. We go to lower realms, right? But then we'll take birth on earth again in families that help nurture us spiritually, right? So either they're righteous, they're pious, or they're wealthy. Because these kinds of families, like a righteous family, provides spiritual values and guidance. A wealthy family reduces material struggles, which gives space for spiritual growth. So both of these circumstances are like conducive to a spiritual life. It's like you get another try. You expend your karmic credits, you come back, you get another try. That's what this earthly planet is for. It's where we get another try. It's where we get another try. And then in 42, Krishna tells us about an even rarer blessing. He says, for those souls who have practiced for like many, many lifetimes, very sincerely, these souls are born into families of great transcendentalists, deeply wise and devotional people. Right? But this kind of birth is extremely rare. It's extremely rare, but it's incredibly helpful. Right? Because if you grow up immersed in devotion and spiritual culture right from the get-go, right from the moment of conception, this soul is getting a huge advantage right from the start. Juxtapose that to somebody who grows up like wondering when their next meal is going to be in a family of like no spiritual values. It's going to be pretty difficult to make a lot of spiritual progress. So if you've practiced sincerely for lifetimes, Prabhupada put himself in this category, and you take birth in a very high transcendental family that can give you that strong foundation. Okay. So then in 43, we're almost there. We're coming around. We're coming around to the home. I don't know baseball very well. Home base. Anyway, okay, 44. In 44, oh no, 43, sorry. In 43, Krishna says that in such births, the divine consciousness from previous lives revives naturally. The spiritual progress from past lives awakens and the soul feels pulled again towards yoga, right? Even without understanding why. This explains people we all know these people, or maybe we are these people who have this innate spiritual pull or curiosity. Like it's not new. They've been doing this for lifetimes. This is a revival of what their soul has already cultivated. Because we know it's all just a revival of our soul. We're not getting something new. We're uncovering what is already there. And so then in 44, Krishna points out that such a person is naturally attracted to yogic principles. Right? Even without following strict rituals or scriptures, like maybe they don't even know anything, right? But they're just attracted to yogic principles. Right? Their deep past practice makes the path feel familiar and natural to them. And then finally, the last verse of this section, this will wrap up this final question that Arjuna asks. Krishna gives a sobering but encouraging truth. He says, spiritual perfection often takes many lifetimes of sincere effort. It's not instant. There's no like instant coffee for this. Right? Everything is so instant here. And if it's not instant, we want to make it instant, like instant coffee. but it can't be made instant. There's no microwave. Right? It can't be instant, right? But The good news is no effort's ever lost. So whatever progress you make, even if you fall off that path, even if you're that little cloud, right, this kind of away, kind of just lost and drifting, right, your spiritual progress will carry forward and it will eventually reawaken under the right conditions. And that'll help pull you back towards the goal. So it's going to take a long time, right? But whatever effort you make, you never lose it. Whatever money you're putting into that spiritual bank account, it's staying with you forever. So that reminds us, the spiritual growth, it's lifelong. It's lifetime journey. It requires patience, persistence, faith. But we also get some hope here, right? That no sincere effort is wasted. The soul's connection to the divine keeps moving forward. So now we're rounding out here to the final last two verses of the section, and these really pull it all together. This is really kind of where this whole chapter, where these first 6 chapters are taking us. Right? So if you haven't listened to this class, or you've kind of been in and out, like come back here, listen to these last 2 verses, because this is like the final mic drop. Right? Krishna concludes the chapter by stating that among all yogis, the one who fixes their mind on him with devotion is the topmost. Right? He tells Arjuna, he says, be a yogi, Arjuna. And why? Because the yogi is greater than someone who practices intense austerities, greater than someone who just pursues intellectual knowledge, greater than someone who performs actions for material gain. Right? He's not talking, when he says be a yogi, he's not talking about external effort here. He's talking about the heart of yoga, right? A genuine living connection with the absolute truth, with Krishna himself. It's this connection that makes a yogi truly greater than others. And then in the final verse of this chapter, this really kind of prepares us to go into this bhakti yoga section in the next chapter. He takes it deeper. He gets super personal. He says, the highest yogi is the one who with strong faith, who always stays connected to me, who thinks of me inwardly. This is Krishna, okay, who thinks of me inwardly and lovingly serves me. This shows that the ultimate yoga, it's not just about mental control or detached action. It's about loving devotion or bhakti. Right? And so far, the chapter's focused on mind control and steady practice. But all of that is only intended to take us to this place, to the real goal of yoga, which is a heartfelt connection. Right? It's like preparing our inner landscape to be like fertile soil for this heartfelt connection. Right? It's important. Like we have to fertilize our soil so that we can have this heartfelt connection. But that's what we're actually going for. We don't want to get stuck on the platform of the body, on the mental control, on the yamas, the niyamas, the do's, the don'ts. We want to know that it's all just bringing us to this place that can facilitate this loving connection with God, right? And that's what yoga means, connection. And the highest connection is emotional and personal. It's bhakti. It's not just knowing Krishna in our heart, not knowing the super soul in the heart, but loving him as the true goal of life. And when we live with Krishna in our hearts and we offer him love, that's the summit of yoga. And he makes it clear, without bhakti, other forms of yoga, they just fall short. So this final teaching, it's an invitation. Be a yogi, yes, but let your yoga be rooted in love, in faith, and in personal connection with God, because that's where this lasting fulfillment lies. Right? So yeah, this chapter 6, it dives deep into the whole Ashtanga yoga thing, like the nuts and bolts of how to get your mind and your body on track. But that's just so Krishna, then he drops the real mic, that the best, the most complete yoga, this is bhakti yoga, this yoga of love and devotion. Right? And this is just the warm-up. This is just the warm-up. In chapter 7, Krishna's really going to start to spill all these juicy details about how to really connect with him through loving service. And it's like a shortcut to spiritual success, like straight from the heart. So that's where we're going, right? Get ready. Things are about to get way more personal and way more fun. But that's what we've been prepping ourselves for this the past year, right? We've all been together here preparing our minds and our bodies for this.
I think it's so cool. I'm going to share quickly. Just yeah, at the end, Krishna's like, but you can try and control the mind and the body by your own practice. But if you just like go into your heart and remember I'm in there and add me to everything you do, then your mind and body kind of automatically get controlled. And
Mm.
because often I get caught in that. I'm like in my head thinking like, oh, I need to like rearrange my house and get rid of all this stuff and make more time. And I'm like, well, if I just go into my heart, like, it doesn't feel like such a heavy practice. And it's just like last week when Michael had us do japa. He was like, sometimes japa can feel like such a chore, or you're in your head about it, like, oh, I have to do it. I have to try. And there's some of that pushing beyond the mind. But once we let go of the mind and we just go into the heart, japa's easier. Life is easier. Like the heart space is just like, yeah. So my practice recently has been like, okay, like my mantra lately is like, let go of the mind, let go of like thinking you have to do it all. Just be in your heart, and then naturally you can just do it. Like it's just like it's a different mood and feeling completely. Like, yeah, to practice those.
That
The
is so perfect.
mind wants to be like, I have a better solution, and the mind, and it's like, no, the heart has the real solution, and that's where Krishna is, and that's what Krishna says, really.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a perfect conclusion there. Perfect share. Thank you, Mariah. Shakti, did you want to share something?
Yeah. So I think, like when Krishna says, that that this isn't going to be easy, right? It's not going to be easy, and but I'm here for you always. Like,
Mm.
so even if you step in and you're like, and then you step out, still there for me. So I guess for me, like it's really, I can get really emotional about it. Like just to know, like he's always there for me, and I haven't felt that a lot, um, as I grew up. Like I felt like being there for me was always attached to something, like even to the same thing. My parents would say, "Here's $1," and and if whatever happened, and they'd be like, "Oh, but I remember I gave you that dollar." Like everything had like a string attached, like almost like they were reeling me in. Like, see, and it's like for me, I get emotional because I love Krishna so much, and to know that he's always there for me. Um, and he does. He shows up. I've had many Draupadi moments, many Sri Krishna movement, please, please. And he's always been there for me. And, I will say, along the path, here is some really good news. And I doubt it's only me, that those times are becoming less and less, where
Mm.
I'm actually able to make the choice, like this thing with my friends. Like, I mean, they're my friends. There's not my friends. I just can't. I don't really want to associate in that way anymore. And if I told them that, they wouldn't understand it. So I sort of have to step away, and I guess that, and then I ended up, going with my husband to see Narasimha last night. So like that was my two choices, and it was like, wow. Um, so no, I don't. I say this as a neophyte myself. Um, that the times that it happens get smaller and smaller if you just continue to keep following the path that he's saying right here. Follow this path, and I will be there for you, and you can be, I don't know, saved, or you can be, you will be held. Just follow this path, like it's basically written. So we just, and for a lot of us, like just having to do that, or someone telling us what to do, it's like, what? I know what to do, right? Our mind, the Maya tells us, I know what to do. No one has to tell me, but someone does need to tell me,
Hmm.
and since I followed this, gratitude, is so, I cry from a place of not, it's not really sadness. It's just like love and growth and excitement about what the next piece of that's going to look like.
Wow. Wow, Stacy or Shakti, you're really doing it. Amazing. Thank you for being here, and thanks for being such an inspirational light for all of us. Thank you. Okay, my friends. Well, that's it. That's our journey through the first 6 chapters, and it's really just starting. It's really just starting. So please continue this journey with us as we start to unfold the Bhakti yoga path. So thank you all, and I'll see you all on Thursday.
Thank you.